Let's go over what I call the in-office activation. Essentially, it's how to get your existing patients, guests, as a new patient. Now, how I want to start this is you've got to remember, how do you see potential new patients becomes very important. And that's based on the S curve of economics. In other words, everybody you see, everybody, whether it's at the grocery store, the bank, on the street, a guest in your office, anybody. You got to realize the breakdown and the potential for new patients. So remember, 8% of those people that you see every day, whether it's a guest of your new patient, whether you're in the grocery store, 8% of them are going to be looking to go to a chiropractor within 1 year. Now, do we want to wait around for that? No, we don't want to wait around for that. That leaves the 92%. And again, this is how you have to see the world to see the abundance of new patients. Because there's a lot of new patients out there. They're just not looking for chiropractors. Well, you can change that. So you go, that leaves the 92% left. So out of that 92%, we know that 25% of them do not have a gateway problem: back pain, neck pain, headaches, joint pain, things like that. Now, that's real important to understand gateway, because it's even that much more difficult to get somebody to buy something that they don't perceive that you do. And the example I give all the time is, why do people go to Taco Bell? To buy tacos and burritos. So what if Taco Bell started selling computers? Are you going to go to Taco Bell to buy a computer now? No. Okay. So that's why understanding gateways is so important. So you always want to stay within gateways, number one, or that alone will create a big problem for you. Now, the good news is, out of that 92%, 25% of them do not have a gateway problem. Now, they may, and chances are they have other kinds of problems, whether it's diabetes or they're overweight or whatever. But I'm talking about the gateway problems: back pain, neck pain, headaches, joint pain. Okay. And remember the statistics: 84% of the people come to a chiropractor for back pain, neck pain, and headaches. The neuromusculoskeletal category, 7% come for still neuromusculoskeletal extremities. And you'd be surprised how many people still don't even think chiropractors treat extremities. So if you even tried to market for extremities, you're talking about 7%. You're talking about 7% of the 8%. That's a real small number. That takes you to 91%. And then the remaining 9% is what are called the somatovisceral reflex conditions, or what some people call the subluxation, the asthma, allergy, bedwetting, stuff like that. But they don't come. And what's important to know about that is a couple things. Number one, it's a real small number. 9% of 8% is an unbelievably small number. So you don't even want to go there, number one. But number two, it's a deceptive number, because the 9% still don't pick up the phone when they have allergy, asthma, or bedwetting and call chiropractor. 80% of those people came into the chiropractor for back pain, neck pain, and headaches. The chiropractor just started treating them for asthma, allergies, bedwetting, or whatever. So only 20% of the 9%, that's how small of a number it is, that people will call a chiropractor to treat asthma, allergy, or bedwetting, the so-called subluxation or somatovisceral. And it's largely because it's a huge paradigm shift. We're at a totally different category. So we got neuromusculoskeletal, and then you got the visceral category. So it's a total change in category. But also, chiropractic has shown that it's not as effective. I've treated a lot of patients who had high blood pressure, asthma, allergy, all that, and I couldn't help them at all when I went with the chiropractic adjustment. And I have helped a few people that have had asthma, allergies, or high blood pressure. But on a percentage level, Was that normal? No, that wasn't normal. And by the way, if it was 120 plus years later, people would be going to chiropractors. So, and of course, the bad news about that is when you market something, in other words, like Taco Bell, if they started marketing that they sell computers, the bad news is now you don't even think they would be good at tacos and burritos, and you wouldn't even want to go to them for a taco or a burrito now because it's such a paradigm shift. And that's exactly what's happened with chiropractic. And that's why it's stuck at 8% utilization, mass confusion of what exactly chiropractors do, and 67% negative name recognition. It's by claiming all these other these paradigm shift conditions. Hell, I just went to a chiropractic convention a few months ago, Florida Chiropractic Convention, and they had continuing education hours for chiropractors diagnosing and treating cancer. It was continuing ed, it was, you got credit hours for that. Well, that's, you talk about destroying credibility. So that's what's happened. So that's the importance of staying in the gateways. Now when we go back to the abundance, you got to go, well, where's the abundance of new patients? Well, the abundance of new patients is not the 8% that's going to be looking for a chiropractor within a year. The abundance is in the 92%, and you subtract out the 25%. Those are the people that have, that's 80% of the or excuse me, 75% of the 92%. That essentially represents 68% of the population. So 68% of the population has some kind of back pain, neck pain, or headaches, arthritis. Matter of fact, arthritis, joint pain is 1 in 5 people. It's the highest disability in the United States, 1 in 5. Okay, so there's a ton of people. And if you don't see it, if you can't see it this way, you'll never get a whole lot of new patients. You not only have to see it, but you have to know how to act on it. And so that's what we cover. And so how do we know that there's this massive amount of patients? It's the second leading cause of people going to the emergency room. It's the second leading cause of people going to the local general practitioner or medical doctor. It's the second leading workers' compensation. And I'm just talking about back pain alone. I'm not even talking about neck pain, headaches, joint pain, arthritis. So there's a massive amount of new patients that drive by chiropractors' offices every day. And it's the second leading, and joint pain's the second leading, or the number one over-counter prescription. NSAIDs are for joint pain. So you got a massive amount of people that literally fall under the category of the gateways, but they're not looking for a chiropractor. That's the big problem. Okay, so first you got to see the opportunity. And actually it even gets better when you kind of start whittling it down and you start looking at demographics, psychographics, geographics. Well, as soon as I start going into somebody that's over 40, the stats go up significantly. So it's very different if somebody's 16 years old versus they're 45, as far as probability of having back pain, neck pain, headaches, joint pain, arthritis, something like that. Okay. So it definitely gets bigger 40 plus, when you're 40 years old, and especially with women. Women go to the doctors more, that they pay attention to their healthcare more, they go to the doctors more. That's a statistical fact. Okay. So, and especially the blue collar community. And the reason it's the blue collar community is because the blue collar community needs their bodies to go to work, and work provides for the primary needs: food, shelter, oxygen, food and shelter. So that's why somebody with back pain who is maybe a plumber or electrician, they're more likely to go to a chiropractor than an accountant. Number one, an accountant's less likely to have back pain because they're not physically using their body. And even if they did, they're less likely to go to the chiropractor because they don't need to use their back to go to work. They can just take some pills, rest a little bit, whatever. So that's the difference it makes. So we can do a deeper dive, but in general, there's a lot of new patients out there. And if you got to see it that way. In other words, everybody's a potential new patient. They're somewhere on that S curve. They're either an 8%er, they're either a 25% of the 92%, or they're 75% that has a problem. And then when you go to that 75%, 10% of them, the problem's much more significant. Well, they're even much easier to get as new patients. 10% of them, the problem's a lot less significant. So it's a little harder to get those people. And then there's the 80% in the middle. And so the whole formula to get those patients is to establish need, minimize the obstacles of time or money, and the more of a trusted relationship you are, the better, because trust decreases defenses and resistance, and people are more receptive. So that's why it's even better when you have patients come in and they come in with a guest. The trust is already there to some degree than if it was a total cold call. So they're going to be even more willing to talk to you, and their defenses are going to be even further down for you to talk to them or engage them. So you're already fulfilling one of the categories, the trust category. So all I've got to do is I've got to find out if they have a gateway problem, if there's a need. Well, in other words, where do they fall in the S curve? Is there no need at all? Well, if there's no need at all, you just leave them alone. But there's a high percentage of them. It's actually 68%. So if you had 10 people come in off the street, 6.8 of them are going to have a gateway problem: back pain, neck pain, headaches, arthritis, joint pain, some as a generalization. And of course, it significantly goes up when the patient gets older, especially if they're over 40, and then it'll significantly go down. It'll go down if the patient's obviously 25 or younger. But statistically, you're still talking about 68% of the population. So you've got to be able to see you got to be able to understand that first. If you can't see that, then you're just going to be sitting around waiting for the 8% to call. And that's a small number, and it's limited by your geographic radius of draw and your competition. And typically, the typical number of new patients that'll call a chiropractor, it's typically between like 4 and 6 a month, just from market forces. That's it. It's about 4 to 6. Sometimes it can be a little more if you got a good location, good visibility, a lot of traffic, that kind of thing, or to be a little less. And it also depends on the density of the population, the people moving through, or it could be a little less, but it's not much. That's why you see chiropractors who don't know much about business and marketing. They'll see like 2 to 6 new patients a month, maybe 8 if they're in a good situation, lower if they're not. And then they typically don't know how to keep them. When they don't know how to keep them, then that's when they're in real trouble. And that's when they typically see between 20 and 40 visits a week. That's the classic chiropractor that's getting market forces that doesn't know how to keep patients right there. So the whole dynamic can change when, number one, you know how to keep patients, you know how to keep them through the inflammation phase, the repair phase, the remodel phase, and take them into the lifestyle. And that's how you should see every potential patient. You want to keep every potential patient for life, every year. You're not just for treating them for that problem or symptom care and move on. You should see it every patient. The goal should be get every patient through all 3 phases of healing, and then move them into the lifestyle care. Now it's not maintenance care, and you never want to promote maintenance care because 97% of people don't pick maintenance care. It's a losing proposition. Okay. And of course, there's formulas and strategies of how to keep patients through just symptom care. Otherwise, they'll just stay in for a few visits until they feel better and they leave. They'll typically stay for 6 or 8 visits and then they leave. Well, if you're only getting 2 to 4 to 8 new patients from market forces, and they're only staying for 6 to 8 visits, you're seeing 20 to 40 visits a week. You're in trouble. And that's the vast majority of the chiropractors. That's why the dropout rate in chiropractic is so high. That's why 50% of the chiropractors aren't even practicing 5, 10 years later. They fail because they never understand and learn the business of chiropractic and the marketing, because there's a ton of business out there, a ton of business out there. They're just not looking for chiropractors. So you have to know how to communicate. So that takes us to the type of marketing. So you go, well, what do we do to get them? Now, I'm not talking about patient retention right now. So what do we do to get? Well, there's publicity, there's advertising, and there's educational sales. Publicity is only geared to increase name recognition and trust. Well, that's not going to get those people. That doesn't create any need. Advertising is geared to do that, plus decrease the obstacles of time or money. So it'll work better than publicity, but it still won't work for that 92% of the population. And I say this all the time. If you're looking for a steak dinner, how many seafood signs? You're driving down the road and you want a steak dinner. There's a need for a steak dinner, and you're driving down the road and you see a seafood restaurant, a seafood sign. How many of them will you pass? You'll pass all of them. And that's what they're doing with chiropractic offices. They're passing your office all the time. They're going to the emergency room. They're going to the GP. They're going taking the NSAIDs. It's the second leading cause of workers' compensation. So they're everywhere. They're all around the chiropractic offices. They're just not calling and driving into the office. So you go, well, how do you reach out to them? Well, that's when you have to use educational sales. That's a combination of education plus sales. Now, typically when I say that, people think it's education. They go, oh, I can educate. I'm not going to, no. If you just do education, it won't work. It won't. And what's the difference? Because you have to establish need, and you got to minimize the obstacles of time or money, and education alone will not do that. So you have to be able to establish need and minimize the obstacles of time or money. Hopefully you start in a trusted relationship, because that makes it that much easier. That's why it's way easier to get your patients guests as new patients. So you got to do the math and go, well, what's the potential of that? I got a lot of new patients. I don't think there was a month went by I didn't get another new patient from a guest, because patients often come in with a family member or friend because they're going somewhere. They're going to the football game. They're going to cheerleading practice. They're going to the grocery store, something. And usually it's a family member, which is great because they'll know of the person's problem, or it's a friend, which was still better than a cold call. So you have to ask yourself, well, how many guests actually come in? Well, a lot of chiropractors don't even know, because they leave them in the waiting room. The chiropractor's in the back, the patient comes in the back, the chiropractor treats the patient and leaves. And the guest just comes in the waiting room, sits down. When a patient comes back out, they leave with the guest. And the chiropractor doesn't even know there was a potential new patient sitting in the waiting room. They're going by you every day. New patients are moving around you every day. How much you intervene and get in there and get in the game and start getting them is up to you, based on your knowledge and skill and your motivation. If you have the knowledge and skill of educational sales, then you have the motivation to actually get in the game, engage, and not wait for somebody to call. You wait for 8% to call, you're in trouble. You're going to have to spend a lot of money on advertising. And usually that doesn't work out very well. I don't know of any offices ever in 30 years that advertising maximized their exchange of time for money. In other words, all they had to do is advertise. I don't know of any offices ever that maximized their exchange of time for money, saw 180 to 220 visits a week. That's about the average number a typical chiropractor can see from advertising. It's usually bad patients. They're more difficult to deal with. They're harder to keep. The overhead goes up. The profit goes down. It's usually a very negative cycle. So there's nothing wrong with using advertising as an addition. But unfortunately, when I do new chiropractor statistics, that's typically all they do. They just have the passive patients come in, and then they spend money on advertising. And of course, that'll never give you abundance. Okay, so that's how you have to see the world first. When I go into the grocery store, I look around. That's how I see everybody in that grocery store. I go, 8% of them here are going to calling a chiropractor in the next year, but I don't want to wait around for them to call. Out of these 92% that I'm looking around, 25% of them don't have back pain, neck pain, and headache. Leave them alone. And it's too easy to find out. I can ask a simple question and find out if they got a gateway problem or not. It's unbelievably easy to find out where they're at real fast. So same with the guest. I'll just ask them one question real fast and I'll know where they're at. Are they in the 75% of the 92%? In other words, are they a potential new patient? They got a gateway problem to some degree. Well, it's real easy to find that out. Ask one simple question. Okay. So, but that's how I see, that's why I'm like a new patient machine. This is how you have to think to be a new patient machine. Is you got to be able to see the abundance first. If you can't even see the abundance, you won't even be able to get it. And most chiropractors aren't trained. They can't see it. I remember when I first graduated, there was an older chiropractor, and he wasn't exactly a good business person or anything. He'd been in practice 30 years, so he had a stable, he's probably seen 80 visits a week to 100, 110, something like that. But I still remember him saying, he goes, "There's patients everywhere." And I remember, this is when I didn't know anything. And I remember thinking, where? I couldn't see it. He could. He could from his experience, his life experience in practicing. Now, he didn't know educational sales, but he just saw it from experience. There's a lot of people that could use chiropractic care that they're just not looking for chiropractors. But I still remember going, where? I couldn't see it, even though the new patients were all around me, because I didn't understand these concepts. And I darn well didn't know how to act on them. Well, that changed. And of course, when that changed, that's when I went from 1 office to 2 offices to 10 offices, 77 offices in 20 states, creating more new patients than I physically can handle anytime I want to. Because I now knew the formula. I knew the S-curve of economics, and I knew educational sales, and I just applied it. I acted on it. That's it. And I created new patient after new patient. And then fortunately, I was good enough that I knew patient retention. So it didn't take a lot of new patients before I was full, because I knew how to keep. I had a 74% prepay rate. So when they came in, they stayed for all 3 phases of healing. Well, that's that many new patients I can't see because I'm already busy. See? That's a great position to be in. It's a great position. It's a great feeling. It's a great position that you can just get as many new patients as you want. You know how to keep them. That's a great feeling. Okay. So let's go into that. So that's how you have to see it first. You got to see the abundance. Okay. So let's go into the formula and some specific keys. And there are some very specific keys to make this work because it happens so fast. You've got to know how to control it. You've got to know what to say. And it happens pretty fast. So, you're the one that has to lead it. You're the one that has to take it to the guest being a guest, to them starting to become a new patient. You're the one that has to control that. So let's go through the steps of how to do that. And then also let's highlight the common mistakes you'll make, that you'll blow it, because it happens so fast. It's very easy to blow it. Okay. And it's like any relationship. If it's a new relationship and it's very fresh and it's just at the beginning, it's very easy to blow that relationship depending on what you say and do. But if there's a longer relationship with more multiple contacts, it's harder to blow that relationship. Well, you don't have that in this situation. You've got a very small window to stair step to start getting that patient to becoming a new patient. And it's a process. They don't just go from being a guest to, yeah, I want to be a new patient and I want to stay for all 3 phases of healing and the rest. That doesn't work that way. You also have, I mean, so there's some major concepts you have to know. So let's walk through them. We got to stair step them, but it's a lot faster. It's pretty fast. Okay, so let's go through these concepts. So that's the first concept, is you got to see the abundance first. And they're not going to call out to you. The guest isn't going to say to you, hey, I'm having neck pain. Can you check me? That's not going to happen. Or they would have already done it. They would have already called you. But just because they didn't call you doesn't mean they're sitting there with no problem. Because they're doing something else. Remember, they're typically doing, when they have these problems, they're typically doing something else. What's the first thing people do when they start having back pain or neck pain? Usually they start limiting their activity. They start limiting the activity that causes that pain. That's typically the first thing they do. What's the next thing they do? They'll start doing a little home therapy. They might do an ice pack, cold pack, aspirin, or ibuprofen. That's what they'll do. They're doing something. That doesn't mean they're going to call you. So just because they didn't call you doesn't mean they don't have a problem. And then if the problem continues to go on, they may do some other things, or eventually they may go to their general practitioner for prescription medication. Okay. So let's go into, so hopefully we can see, first of all, that's the abundance. So everywhere I go to the grocery store, I go to a sporting event, I go to the bank, wherever I go, that's how I see the world. I'm like 8% of them are going to see a chiropractor in the next year. Out of the 92%, 25% of them do not have a problem today. 75% of them do. That's how many potential. And by the way, it's every day like that, because the people who don't have a problem today, they're going to have a problem tomorrow. That's why you don't constantly need new patients. You just need a certain number of people. You just need a certain number of people, whether it's 500, 1,000, 3,000. That's it. Because out of that, there's going to be a certain amount of people that have problems. Well, guess what? The people that don't, eventually they're going to have back pain, neck pain, headaches. So it's not like you need 100,000 people. Usually it's only about 3,000 people. And that's all you ever need. You just need like 3,000. I was in a bedroom community. My office was in a bedroom community. In other words, I wasn't in the inner city. I wasn't in the suburb. I was outside of the suburb where people just lived, but there was no industrial park or jobs. They would get in their car and they'd drive into the city for their job. That's a bedroom community. And I was in a population of 3,000. 3,000. That was it. I had a radius of draw of 10,000. My city was 3,000. I had a radius of draw of 10. And there were 2 chiropractors in my city. 2. I'm seeing 300, 400 patient visits a week with 2 associate doctors. The other 2 doctors are seeing 60 to 80 visits a week. What's the difference? I had knowledge and skill in marketing. They didn't. That's the difference. I knew patient retention. They didn't. I knew marketing. They didn't. That's the difference. I knew how to get a lot of these people who had problems who were not looking for a chiropractor. That was the only difference. Okay, so let's go into these steps here. So the first step is you got to see it. That's the first step. Number 2. And what I used to do when I used to train doctors to get them to see it, I used to send them out, and they were required, like at lunch, and they were required to stop 10 people. Say, excuse me, ma'am, I'm doing a research problem. Can I just ask you three quick questions? This is what I'd have them do. And they had to do this at lunch, and they had to come back because I was trying to get them to see all the people out there that had problems. And I'd have them ask, when they ask the question, do you have any back or neck pain? Do you have any joint pain, arthritis? Just real basic questions. Have you had any old injuries or accidents? Just real simple stuff like that. That was it. And then they would come back. And these were all most of, and the last one is, are you seeing a chiropractor for it? And so that's how I got them to see that there's a ton of people that have problems, but they weren't looking for a chiropractor. That's how I got them to experience it. They're like, wow, there are a lot of people that, so they'd come back out of 10 people, generally it was around 7 out of 10. They'd go, yeah, they had one of these gateway problems. And no, they weren't seeing a chiropractor. That's how I got them to believe it. Okay. All right. So the first thing we pay attention to is the staff is trained. Everybody that comes into the office, everybody, all the guests are required to come back with the patient. That's a rule. They're required to. Now, how that happened, and we took it through 3 resistances. Now, it typically did not take 3 resistances, but that was the rule. No guest was ever allowed to sit in the waiting room, ever, because that's a potential new patient. Now, so I taught my staff what to say. So she'd say, Mary, you can go back to room 1 now or whatever. And then my staff was trained to say, oh, who do you have with you? What's your name? I'm Jane. I'm her friend. I'm her sister. I'm her mother, whatever. So the staff was trained to say that. Hi, Jane. How you doing today? Who do you have with you today, Jane? Oh, this is Mary. What's your relationship? We always like to know what's the relationship. What's your relationship? Oh, she's my sister. She's my mother, whatever. Okay. Okay. That was what she was trained to do first. Now, when she goes, Jane, you can go back to room 1. She goes, Mary, you can go with her. Now, the vast majority of the time, Mary would just go back with her. Okay. Sometimes Mary would go, that's okay, I'll sit here. Well, I taught my staff resistances, that's not acceptable, to go to the second resistance. She goes, well, that's okay, you going back with Mary. It's no problem for you to come on back. She'd go to the second resistance. Now, what did I train my staff about second resistances? 50% of the people will cave on the second resistance. That's a true fact. That's why everything you do should never do one time. You'll increase your statistics in life just by doing it, by persisting twice, not once. Because 50% of the time, people will cave on the second resistance. I taught my staff this. They knew about first resistances, second resistances, third. They knew this. Okay. And we trained in the verbiage. We role played. So they got comfortable with it. So that's what it would sound like. The patient would come in. Hi, Mary, how are you doing today? And forgive me if I forget the names right. Hi, Mary, how you doing today? Let me have you sign in. Okay. You can go on back, Mary. And who do you have, or before she's going back, say, hey, Mary, and who do you have with you here? What's your relationship? I'm a friend, mother, whatever. Okay, you can go on back with her. It's no problem. The vast majority of the time, they'd go back. Okay, let's say 50, 70% of the time. All right. Sometimes 20, 30% of the time, they'd say, that's okay, I'll sit out here. Well, she knew to not let, she'd go, that's okay, you can come on back. The doctor would be interested in meeting you. So she knew at least to go to the second resistance. Now, if the patient said, now at this particular point in time, we're at like 90% of the patients that are coming back now. Okay, so that's kind of how it works. The first time you do it, you'll get the majority of them to come back. The second resistance, you'll get another 15, 20% to come back. And then there'll be a third resistance. Well, she was trained on the third resistance to get me. Now, it did not matter what I was doing. She was trained to get me. Why did it not matter? Because that was a potential new patient. And everything stops for new patients. Everything. So she goes, that's okay. I'll just sit here. If that happened on the second resistance, she was trained to stop what she was doing, walk right back, tap on the door, wherever I was, tap on the door, say, so-and-so here is, I can't get so-and-so to come back. She's with Mary and I can't get her to come back. That was the clue. Then I would go out there and I go, hey, I'm Dr. Paul. At first I'd ask the patient, I go, so you have somebody here with you? What's their name? What's the relationship? You always want to know the name and the relationship. You want to know the relationship for legal reasons, especially if they're minors and especially if they're not your patient's kids. You can't do this. So you got to have, they're minors, you got to have that parental agreement, number one. But you can't do this to somebody coming in that's a minor that their guardian or their parent's not there. That's just a legal issue. That's pretty rare anyway that happens. Okay, so I would find out what's her name, Jill. What's the relationship with you and Jill? Oh, she's my sister, whatever it is. Okay, now I know. Then I go out into the waiting room. I go, hey, Jill, you're here with Mary? Is that right? Come on back. Come on back with Mary. You can come on back with Mary. Usually when I did that, they just pop right up and come back. It's over. So we're probably at 97% of the people right now. The guest, I've gotten the back, either through the first resistance, second resistance from my office manager, or the first resistance from me. I'm the authority figure. I'm at 97% easy. And if they didn't, then I went to the second resistance. I said, no, come on back. Come on back with me. It's not a problem. And I never had a patient. I can't remember any patient that overcame 4 resistances, 2 from my staff member and 2 from me. I can't remember any. Okay, so hopefully you got the point about getting them back. That's the rule. Nobody's allowed to wait in the waiting room, and we know how to get them back. And that's what we want to say and do. Okay, so they come on back. Now, this is what gets important. We got to pay a lot of attention. Remember the rule with multiple contacts. When every time there's a multiple contact, trust and defenses and resistance go down. Trust and confidence goes up. That's a natural rule with multiple contacts. Now, this also applies on a micro level in the office. So even if it's not one day to the next, like multiple contacts, one day to the next, or 1 week to the next, something like that, it still applies on a micro level within that room, in that office. And this is what becomes very important to understand. We've got to do 3 micro contacts. We don't just attack them to become a new patient. And as a matter of fact, it's kind of sneaky how we go about it. Because if you just came right out and go, oh, do you got a problem? We can help you. It's over. You're going to create one hell of a defensive reaction. That's what will happen. Okay, so they come back. So when they come back, I just want to make sure everything's here. If I don't know the name in the relationship, I'm going to make sure I know it now. Say, hi, Mary, come on back here. Now, before I start with the patient, I'm going to do my first contact with the potential the potential new patient. And that's what I've introduced myself. I said this, that, by the way, and then here's what I want to say. I not only want to know the name and the relationship, and this helps break down the defenses and the resistance, is just don't jump into the chiropractic or problem part. So I typically say, how you doing? What's your name? Mary. What's your relationship? Oh, I'm her sister. Okay, good. And then I'll say, by the way, have you ever been to a chiropractor before? That's the first stage right there. And then I'm going to walk away. I'm going to turn away. Now, all I did is I'm just throwing up the first flag here to see if they bite on it. That's all I'm doing. And also I'll get an idea if maybe they have been to they've been to a chiropractor before. That's a good thing. Not just because they've been to a chiropractor. Chances are they probably have some recurring problems from that problem. So that's what I'll say. I'll get their name. What's your relationship? By the way, have you ever been to a chiropractor before? That's what it sounds like. Then I want to turn away. So that's the first contact. I want engagement. I want to start talking to them. You know, when you first meet people, they're usually defensive, they're usually shy, they're usually resistant. I need to start working on that. I need to start working on it and starting to get them comfortable interacting with me. So when I come back around to get them as a new patient, they're not all high defenses. So that's what the first stage will be. And by the way, I'll use body language too. So when I do that, I'll be facing them, generally speaking. And I'll say, hey, what's your name? So and so. What's your relationship? And I say, okay. By the way, have you ever been to a chiropractor before? Okay. So I'm just floating it out there. And even if they say, no, but I need to, man, I got neck pain or back pain. I'm not biting. I'm not biting. I'm letting it go because I'm going to be violating the multiple contacts. I want them to get more comfortable with me before I come back around and start engaging them with their problem. Okay, so that's the first contact. Then I'm going to turn away. My body language is going to turn away. Now, this is important because when your body language turns away, when you're facing somebody, their defense and resistance can be a little higher. When you turn away and you do a misdirection, in other words, you turn to the patient now, that drops their defenses and resistance a little bit. They're not as high awareness now. It's like, okay, it's not on me. By the way, this is just natural human dynamics. Okay. So we're just using natural human dynamics, but you got to be highly aware of them. So then I'll turn away and turn to the patient. I'll go, okay, Mary, let me have you sit right here or whatever. I'll position the patient now. Now I'm going to explain to the patient what I'm going to do. Why am I going to explain to the patient? I want to engage them so their defenses come down again. So when I do come back around to talk to them, their defenses and resistance are already down. They've already talked to me. So it's going to be much easier for them to open up to me. Okay, by the way, have you ever been to chiropractor? No, Mary, let me have you sit here. Now, let me just share with you real quickly what's going on with Mary. Now, remember, they came as a guest, okay? Mary had some neck pain, blah, blah, blah. It's a real brief. Mary's had some neck pain. What we found is there's some pinched nerve or some joint pressure, disc pressure. And then what we're doing is actually, when we adjust her, we're actually going to adjust her. We're actually going to move the bones to help relieve the pressure. When we do that, and I tell the person, said, sometimes it can look scary because it's quick and fast, but it actually feels good usually. But that's what we're doing with Mary. Okay. So, and then typically I'll get Mary to say how much she's doing, how it feels. I'll say, how's it? Generally, when I do adjust your Mary, how's it feel? And of course, the patient usually feels a lot better, because it does. When you get adjustment, it feels better. So I'm doing that to convey to the patient, it's okay. And by the way, you better do this. You better explain anytime a patient comes into that room, you better not adjust that patient without explaining them what you're doing. And it's going to look painful, but it's going to feel good. Otherwise, it's shocking. To you, it's not. But it's shocking to the average person out there who's never been to a chiropractor, never seen a chiropractic adjustment, for you to crank on their neck like that. You want to create one hell of a defensive reaction? Go ahead and don't explain anything. Even after you explain it, they'll still kind of jump. That's not normal for normal people. So you got to remember this. It's normal for you. It's not normal for people who've never been to a chiropractor before. So you better explain it. You better explain that it's going to be quick and fast and it's going to look painful, but it's not. It actually feels pretty good. And then I want my patient to say that to increase the trust. So, Mary, when we typically adjust you, how does it typically feel? Oh, it feels great. I want her to know it's okay. It's good. Okay. Again, when that happens, what's happening to their defenses and resistance? It's going down. What's happening to the engagement? What happens to engagement? Their defenses and resistance go down. Okay. So That's the second engagement. I haven't gone after them yet. I've gone through two engagement. This is very important to understand. You've got to separate out the contacts, the micro contacts, before you actually go in to engage the person about their potential problem. It's vital. You can't just come at them. So I did the first engagement, left them alone, turned, went to my patient. Second engagement, hey, Mary, how you doing today? Blah, 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 blah. By the way, let me just share with you, Mary, you say, have you never been a chiropractor before? You haven't? Let me just share with you what we're doing with Mary here. Now, Mary has she's got a little bit of joint pressure. It was causing her some neck pain. I'm actually going to adjust her. When we adjust her, it's actually going to be quick and fast. And it actually looks painful, but when we relieve the pressure, it actually feels pretty good. Mary, how does it typically feel when we adjust you? Oh, it feels good. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. So that's what you'll see here when we do this. So, okay. So that's the second engagement. Leave them alone now. Turn away. Body language turns away. You go back to your patient. Go ahead and adjust your patient. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. Then when you finish with your patient, all right, Mary, you can sit up here for me. We're coming in for the third contact. The third contact is the engagement. Now we're going to go for the engagement. Now, what are we going to do? We're going to do the educational cell system. That's what we're going to do. We're going to establish need, and then I'm going to minimize time or money to take the first step. I'm not going to ask for care. I'm just going to go for a very small micro step. I'm going to stair step. Okay. So we finish with the patient. All right, Mary, that'll do it. You can sit up here for me. And I want to leave the patient in, especially if it's a family member, because the family, I'm going to use the family member to dump on the patient. It's one of the phenomena that if you haven't experienced it yet, people will deny their problem. They'll minimize and deny their problem. That's common. What's real interesting when you get family members in, like spouses or brothers or sisters, when you go and you talk to this person, they'll minimize their problem. Now, if you go to this other person and you try to engage them, they'll typically minimize their problem. But now when I come back to this one and I engage this one about the other person's problem, they will unload. Now, I'll use that to my advantage. Now, if you don't know this, it's amazing. They'll blow the whistle on them. An example is like if I'm sitting there and I'll go, oh, have you ever had any back pain or neck pain or headaches, Joe? And Joe goes, no. And I'll turn to their wife and go, is that right? Joe doesn't have any back pain, neck pain, headaches. And I can't tell you. It's like they unload. They're, oh, Joe's got problems. He tells me about his neck problems all the time. I've been trying to get him to do something for it. I'm like, whoa. This one from Joe minimizing, from Joe going, not really, or no to not really, a minimizing statement. And then I'll come over to the other person and boom, they'll unload on them. And now it's out in the open. It's game on. And I will engage the other person. I'll use the other person to help sway that person to move forward and take the next step. Okay, very powerful, very powerful. Okay, so we're at the third contact. These are separate contacts. We're now at the third contact. We're done with adjusting the patient. I'm going to turn back to the patient now. And then I'm going to resume the conversation, say, so you've never been to a chiropractor before, have you? Then I'm going to go into, so you don't have any back. Now, there's a couple ways to do this, because remember, what we're doing now is trying to go into the admit phase. That's where we're trying to go. Now, remember, you got to remember how to ask this. You could remember, there's typically 3 questions to ask when you go into the admit phase and how you would ask them. We'll go into that. And then let's back it down into the bare minimum 2 and how you do it. Because how you say it is called reverse psychology, is very, very important. So typically the first question may be something like, do you have any problems at all? I don't like doing that. I don't like necessarily asking just an open-ended question to start with. Now, if you do ask an open-ended question like that, are you having any problems? And you don't say any gateways, you just say, are you having any problems? If somebody admits on the first resistance, what that tells you is their problem is much higher. They have a much higher awareness of the problem. That's what it tells you. And then the second problem, I'll actually use the gateways. So what I recommend is just flat out using, just at least doing two, leave the first one alone and do two and go right to the gateways. So do you have any back pain, neck pain? And remember, you got to stick with the gateways. Do you have any back pain? And typically this is what it'll be. Do you have any back, Mary, you've never been a chiropractor before? Do you have any back pain, neck pain, headaches, or any joint pain, arthritis? So that's the first resistance. It's gateway, first resistance. Now, sometimes they'll say a minimizing statement. Yeah, I have a little bit or da. I got a potential new patient right there. They're in the admit phase right now. Okay. So let's say they didn't. Then I have to do reverse psychology. I'm going to do the gateways, and it's called a takeaway. So you don't have any back pain, neck pain, headaches, joint pain, or any old injuries at all? That's how you have to say it. That pulls people out when you do the reverse. So you went to the second resistance, and it's called negative phraseology. And what happens with second resistances? You increase the likelihood of them responding 50%. So you go to the second resistance. And why do you want to use gateways? Because it's easier to say yes to. It's easier to take a multiple choice test than an essay test. It's easier to answer if I give the options. Okay. So generally speaking, that's why I generally don't even start with the first resistance question with the open-ended question. Do you have any problems or any health-related problem? I generally just bypass that. I'll go right to the gateways, first resistance. So do you have any back? And I'll ask them out front. So do you have any back pain, neck pain, headaches, joint pain, any old injuries? Now, what percentage of the time are people typically going to say yes to this? Now, remember, when they do say yes, will it be a maximizing statement? Will they go, oh, yeah, man, it hurts like hell. I've been meaning to go. No, that's not what they'll do. We all minimize. Everybody minimizes. We have to for protection. You got to know this. They're going to say a minimizing statement. That doesn't mean the problem's minimal. We have to minimize stuff just to get through the day. So, but be ready for a minimizing statement. It sounds something like that, just a little, every now and then. That's what a minimizing statement sounds like. Okay. All right. So Mary, do you have any back pain, neck pain, headaches, arthritis, joint pain, anything like that? Let's say they go, no. So now I'm going to do the negative reverse second resistance. So you don't have any back pain, neck pain, headaches, joint pain, any old injuries at all? And I'll go absolute at all. I'll go, you don't have any of that at all? Now, I tell you right now, 7 out of 10 people sitting in that chair saying yes to a problem. That's the reality. That's how much is going on out there. Now, if it's a younger person, they're 22 years old, there's obviously less probability. Now, when it's a younger person, what do I focus on? They're not going to have the older problem. What I focus on when it's a younger problem? Accidents. What do I focus on if it's I'll do the kid separately. What do I focus on if it's a kid? Scoliosis. I'll cover that separately. But if it's a younger person under 30, I'll focus on accidents. You ever been in any accidents, car accidents, injuries? That's where they'll have problems. Kids at scoliosis, if they're over 30, I'm sticking with pretty much the gateways, back pain, neck pain, headaches, things like that. That's where you're going to have the high probability. You got to know this. You got to think like this. You got to go to high probabilities. So, all right. So we go to the second resistance. 70% of the time it's yes. Now, what I'll do before I finish is I'll turn to the patient and go, is that right, Mary? Let's say Mary's my patient. Is that right, Mary? Jill doesn't have any problems? I'll especially do that if it's a spouse. If it's a spouse, especially. the spouse will dump on them. They know the problems and they'll dump on them. So always ask, go to the first resistance, ask the gateways. That'll be about, if they got a problem, about 30 to 40% of the time they'll admit to there. It won't be over 50. And I'm just telling you from experience. When you go to the second resistance and you do the negative reverse with the gateways, so you don't have any back pain, neck pain, headaches, joint pain, any old injuries whatsoever at all, you're at about 70% right now. 70% of the people are now admitting to a problem. That's where you're at right now. So, because remember, we go through the admit phase, consequences, personalization. That's how you establish need. Remember, there's 3 phases you got to go through. By the way, the admit phase is one of the easiest. It's pretty easy to get somebody, especially when you go to a second resistance. Remember, that's not the hard part. The difficult part is the consequences part. So we go to the admit phase. They go, well, yeah, just a little bit of neck pain. They don't say anything after the second resistance. I'm asking whoever's sitting here, is that right? Mary doesn't have any problems at all. She doesn't have any back pain, neck pain. She's okay. If there's no, and no, you don't have a new patient. It's over. Put your patient on therapy and move on. Okay. But you're at about 70% when you do what I just said. First resistance, second resistance, negative reverse, finish with the patient in asking, confirming with them. You're at about 7 out of 10 people admitting to a problem right now if they're over 30 years old. That's where you're at right now. Okay, so you're on the cusp of a new patient. You're moving toward a new patient is what's happening. All right, so what happens next? Well, if there's nothing, it's over. All right, it's good to meet you, Mary. All right, or Jill, Mary, let me have you do therapy. You take care. It's over. Move on. Okay. All right, they go into the admit phase. They admit something. Okay, they're going to minimize. What do you do next? Confirm it. How do you anchor it? You say exactly what they say. You use a minimizing statement and get the agreement. I just have a little bit of neck pain or every now and then. So you just have a little bit of neck pain every now and then. Is that right? It's called bonding at the lowest level. That's what it's called. We've anchored it. Now, why do you want to do that? Because once you've anchored it and they've agreed, they can't go back on it now. They can't deny it. You've solidified the admit phase. That's what you need to do. Always anchor. Whatever minimizing statement they say, you say it back to them. So you just have a little bit of back pain. Is that right? It's not an offensive statement. It's an agreement. We're in agreement. We're done with the admit phase. They can't go back. There you go. Now I'm going to ask them, do you mind if I ask you a few questions? Ask for permission now. Do you mind if I just ask you a few questions about it? That's exactly what it sounds like. What am I going to do now? I'm going through the consequences phase. So they said, now I'll go to the anchor first. I said, so you just have a little bit of neck pain. When you say a little bit, do you know what happened? Did anything happen for you to have neck pain? Did you have a fall, an injury, anything like that? No. Then we're going to go into the consequences. Start with the 2 minor consequences. Go to the 2 ADL consequences. Okay. So what are the 2 minor questions? I'm just curious. Are you taking any medication for remember when you say medication, they don't think ibuprofen and Motrin is medication. So anytime you say you're taking any medication, you better follow up with, are you taking any medication? Like whether it's prescription or ibuprofen or Motrin or aspirin or anything like that, you better follow up with that. Well, that's not good. Remember, what's the goal in the admit phase? You got to get them to agree that it's not okay and it's not normal. You got to get them to agree it's not okay and it's not normal. That's what has to happen to establish need in the consequences phase there. So are you taking any medication? Well, I just do every now and then. Well, that's not good. And a lot of times I'll do what's called a minor challenge. I'll say, well, if you were 100% healthy, but you got to watch your tone, how you say it, your body language. It's got to be real soft. They go, I just take it every now and then. Well, I'm just curious, if you're 100% healthy, why would you need to take any medication? See, that's an idiot question. Why am I saying that? I'm trying to start to get them to start thinking it's not okay and it's not normal. So that's called the micro challenge, is what that is. So you taking any medication like ibuprofen, aspirin, Motrin, anything like that? They go, well, just a little every now and then. So I'm just curious, if you're 100% healthy, why would you need to take any medication? Uh, uh, how often do you notice it? Do you notice it more often, less often? Do you notice it more often, less often, or about the same? It doesn't matter what they say. Heart, very rarely they'll say, I'll notice it more often. If they do, they've usually acted on it and they're calling somebody. Usually they'll say it's about the same. That's usually what they'll say. Very rarely they'll say not as often. That's not as much, but it's very rare for them to say more often. You just be ready for this. It's like we already know what's going to happen. I already know what's going to happen just from experience of doing this, probably thousands of times. You know, this isn't, again, just take notes of this. We already know what's going to happen, how it's going to play out. Now, so I'm doing the two minor questions. I go to medication first. I go to frequency second. I'm just curious, are you noticing it more often, less often, and about the same? Remember, it's always easier to do a menu. Give them the options. Don't just give them one option. Like, are you noticing it more often? Don't do that. Are you noticing it more often, less often, or about the same? Well, about the same. Is there any reason why it does? Do you know of any reason why it doesn't go away and stay away and always comes back? That's a big challenge right there. I would memorize that, write it down. That's a not okay, not normal challenge. And it just makes sense when you say it. Are you noticing? And by the way, I'm going to say it whatever they answer. They say it, they're noticing it more often. That's what I'm going to say. They're noticing it the same. That's what I'm going to say. They notice it less often. That's what I'm going to say. Are you noticing it more often, less often, or about the same? Well, about the same. I'm just curious. Is there a reason why it hasn't gone away and it always comes back? Do you know why it hasn't gone away and it always comes back? Have you found out why yet? That usually starts getting them to start thinking. They go, well, no, I don't know. And I'll drive it home again, typically. Typically, I'll say it 2 or 3 times. No, seriously, is there a reason why it always hasn't gone away? Have you ever thought of that? Why hasn't this gone away? Why does it come back? Have you ever thought of that? See, I want them to start thinking it's not normal. It's not okay. You do it by the challenge. That's what the challenge does. The question sets up the challenge. Okay. Now, those are the micro questions, right? Now I'm going to the ADLs. Those are the important questions, the ADLs. I want at least, now remember, there's a general rule with ADLs. Anytime you ask ADLs, what's the general rule? You always want to try to get 3. You want to try to get 3. It's like baseball, 3 strikes and you're out. 1's okay. It doesn't increase the awareness of the problem as much as 2. 2's okay. 2 doesn't increase the awareness of the problem as much as 3. Anytime you talk about ADLs, don't stop at 1. You want 3. Now, we always start with the high probability ADLs. You always go with high probability. So remember, there's 3 sections of ADLs. The first section of ADLs is any pain, and remember the words are pain or restrictions. That's what patients have, pain and restrictions. That's why you always want to use those words. Don't change those words. So, do you have any pain or restrictions with work? Just always start with work. even though work's not an ADL, because that's usually a high priority. Are you having any pain or restrictions with work? What line of work are you in? And I'll ask them that. What line of work are you in? Do you have any pain or restrictions with your neck at work? Now I'm just going to go right down. How about when you sleep? Does it cause any pain or restrictions with sleep? And then how about when you bathing or showering? Any trouble with that? How about getting dressed? Does that bother you at all? We can do that. So that's the core. And then I'm going to go into the inside house activities. Now, I'll pay a lot more attention to the in-house activities if it's a female with kids. That's where you're going to have more potential problems, is a woman taking care of her kids. So now I'm going to let her know I'm changing the subjects. Well, how about some of the in-house activities? So I'm letting them know I changed the subject so it doesn't sound like a run-on. So it doesn't just sound like I'm grilling them one after the other, after the other, after the other. Well, I'm curious, how about in-house activities like cooking? Any pain restrictions with cooking, cleaning, doing laundry, anything like that? No pain or restriction. And I'll typically do the second resistance. And that's what it sounds like. Do you have any pain or restrictions like cooking or cleaning or doing the laundry? If they say, yeah, I'm going to get the admit, they go, no. So I'll do the second resistance takeaway again. That's how it's always a 1-2 statement. If there's nothing there, negative resistance takeaway, absolute. So you don't have any pain or restrictions with cooking, cleaning, or laundry whatsoever. No pain or restrictions with that at all. That's what it'll always sound like. Menu gateway, negative takeaway, second resistance. Always. Just get it into memory. This is what works. This is the communication that works. Okay. And then, let me ask you about outside activities. Let them know you changed the topic again. How about outside activities? Like house maintenance, gardening. Any problems with that? House maintenance, gardening? Any pain or restrictions with that? No. Now, if you don't have 3 there, that's the only time you go to hobbies. If you've already gotten 3, you don't need to go to hobbies. Okay. All right. So let's say they gave you 1, 2, or 3, whatever it is. Okay. So, and remember when they say it, we just confirm it. So you have some pain at work or whatever they said, just confirm it. Agree with them, say it, confirm it. So you have some pain or restrictions, just a little bit at work, whatever it is they had. Okay. Now what do we do? I'll tell you what, let me check you real quick. It'll only take a minute. Now we're going to do a real quick talk-tell exam. And I'm going to tell them, I'm not going to say, do you want me to check you? No, that's not what I'm going to say. Say, I'll tell you what, I'll check you real quick. Sit right here. Again, what's the statistics? Most of the people will just, at this point in time, especially if you've stacked it like what I just said, they're comfortable with you at this point in time. They'll just get up and sit right here over 50% of the time. If they don't, I just go to the second resistance. Oh, it's not a problem. Sit right here. It'll only take a second. I'll just go to the second resistance because I know the power of second resistances. That's no problem. Just sit right here. It'll only take a minute. And then I always include the time element. So they don't think this is going to be a big deal. That's no problem. Sit right here. I can check you real quick. It's no problem. It'll only take a minute. Sit right here. Now, what are the key things that I need to do here in the talk-tell exam? Well, I got to touch it. The importance of touch. Now, where do you feel it? Let me have you point to where you feel it right here. You better make sure you touch it. You better make sure you're on that spot. Is this it right here? Is this here? If you're not on the spot, you better find the spot. You better make sure you touch it. That's very important. That's a very important connector. So where do you feel it? Let me have you point to where you feel it. Right here. Is it right there? Yeah, right there. Now, am I going to do a full-blown exam right now? No. I'm going to do a quick talk-tell exam. What do I already know? The tests that are highly probable to be positive. Active range of motion and overpressure and compression. That's all I'm going to do. I'm just going to move them through. Let me check your move forward, backward, left, right. I'll go in overpressure. I already know the high likelihood of it being positive is an extension in overpressure, generally speaking. Okay. Again, you should already know this stuff. None of this should be a surprise. This is, again, from learning it. So I'll just check the range of motion. I'll do foraminal compression. That's it. If it's the low back, I'll touch it. I'll do range of motion. I'll do Kemp's test and then palpation. I'll lay them on their stomach and I'll palpate it and touch it. Make sure, I'm definitely on the painful area. And so after I did that, and remember, that's how you always end, whether it's a mini exam, a full exam, you always end the exam with the palpation. You touching the problem and getting them to say, yes, that's where it's tender. That's where you always end. So I'll just check their range of motion real quick. I'm going to do, if it's the neck, I'll do foraminal compression. If it's the low back, I'll check the range of motion, go into overpressure. First, I touched it, active range of motion, overpressure, and then I'm going to do palpation. I'll finish with palpation. So I'm only doing 3 things. If you include touching it when you first talk to them, it's 4. That's all that needs to be done to get them to see, there's a problem, where it's at, and get them to admit that's a problem. That's what you need to do. So we've got them into not okay, not normal. We got them to the admit phase. We got them into the consequences phase. We did the talk-tell exam. We got to admit to them where the problem is, and it's a problem. And that's the power of a talk-tell exam. So I'm going to find the problem first. Any pressure here, any pain here, here, just a little bit here. Then I'll do the contrast. So you don't have any problem when we do this here, right? But when we go back, that's where you feel it. Is that right? I'm going to get them to admit they feel the problem and they see the difference between normal and abnormal. Again, this is the basics of a talk-tell exam. So you feel it, you don't feel it here, but you feel it here. Is that right? So now they've admitted to the problem in a talk-tell exam. Okay, so what do you do now? You're done with the exam. You finish with palpation. Well, you tell them what the problem is. You give them a tentative diagnosis. So we'll tell you what, Mary, it looks like, based on what you're telling me and based on what we just found, and remember, the tentative diagnosis is typically joint pressure, disc pressure, nerve pressure. Based on what you're telling me and what we just found, it looks like you're having some joint pressure in your neck. That's what's causing your problem. Okay, does that make sense, Mary? Boom, I'm done with establishing need. That's what I had to do to get to need. Now I need to go to money and time. Okay, I'll tell you what I can do, Mary. I'll tell you what we can do. Now you can set this up however you want. I'll tell you what I can do. Now what I did is I just offered them, and I called it a scout exam. Tell you what, I'll take a scout picture of that. There's no charge for that. Don't worry about it. And we'll see what it looks like, see what's going on in there. Okay. Don't worry about it. It's no charge. Now that's what I did. And then I had them come back the next day, just come back the next day. Or if that patient was coming in at least 2 times a week or 3 times a week, I would have them come back with that patient the next time. Because remember, they feel more comfortable coming back with somebody they know. So if that patient's coming back, if they're at least coming back, now I won't go a week. If your patient's coming in like once a week or once every 2 or 3 weeks, I won't go a week. Why? Time kills all deals. Motivation decreases 50% every 48 hours. So I won't. But most of the time, the patient's coming in, in 2 days, they're being seen like twice a day or 3 times a week, something like that. So I'll just say, tell you what, just come in with Mary the next time she comes in. Mary, when are you coming again? Friday? What time Friday? 4 o'clock? Just come in with Mary at 4 o'clock. Will that work with you? And I'll show you the x-ray. I'll see what's on there, okay? That's how I did that, okay? Now, you could offer the package if you want. You could say, I tell you what, we do have what's called a new patient special. And now you could just give the offer. You could do that. You'll have less participation, because you're pushing it a little bit more in the relationship where you're at in the relationship, but you could do that. And if it was a really good, if it was like a really good offer, if you had like a, $17, new patient special or something like that, I'd probably do that. Just something real simple. But remember, they're not going to agree with treatment for sure. We just found the problem and we're still going to show them the x-ray. So I probably wouldn't do that because we haven't confirmed the problem. Why would they want to pick 3 days of treatment when we haven't even confirmed the problem? See? So that's why I just took the x-ray at no charge. Just come back when Mary comes back. If Mary was not coming back within that week, then I would ask them to come back the next day. Tell you what, I can go over this with you the next day. Now, what do I have to overcome to get them to come in the next day? Money. There's no charge. Just come back tomorrow. I'll go over the x-ray with you. There's no charge for that. And it only take maybe 10 minutes, no more than 15 minutes when you do come in. Okay. Right when you come in, as a matter of fact, we won't even have you wait at all. Right when you come in, I'll just have the staff member bring you right back and I'll show you the x-ray. You got to cover money and time, right? You should know this, money and time. This is all muscle memory. Everything I'm saying needs to get the muscle memory. You don't see me looking at any notes, do you? Because it's muscle memory. I've done this thousands of times. You got to role play it into muscle memory. You can't just wait to apply this to a patient and then try to get it to muscle memory that way. It'll take you forever. You better role play to get this to muscle memory so it works the first time you do it. You're not blowing it several times, just trying to figure out how to do it. You won't have the frequency enough to do it anyway. You got to role play to get it in. You got to get it to that muscle memory as fast as possible. Only role play is going to do that. Okay. So that's what I would do. You'd have a harder time selling a package that included visits because we haven't confirmed the problem. The x-rays are going to confirm the problem. Okay, so just take that into consideration. All right, so I've scheduled them. Now they're coming back in the next day. I'd probably say about 80% of them came back. About 20% of them maybe didn't, but I'd say at this point in time, about 80% of them did. Because you got to remember, you're in a trusted relationship to start with. You've engaged with them. You've established the problem, the consequences. I mean, so you're way down the road in this relationship by all these steps that you've done up to this point in time. Okay. All right. So what do you do now when they come in? You do a mini report. So what's the bare minimum that you need to do when they come in? You better confirm. Okay. I'm not going into 3 phases of healing. They haven't committed to anything. You better confirm the problem first, Mary. So I'm going to go into the admit consequences phase again. So Mary, before you look at the x-rays, let me understand. You were just having a little bit of neck pain, bothered you just a little bit at work and a little bit at sleeping, right? That when we talked about that the other day, that was all there was to it, right? So I would at least want them to go back into the admit phase and consequences with the ADLs to some degree. Okay. Remember, that's what you need to do to establish need. And we got to do it again because it's been maybe 24, 48, 72 hours since the last time. Okay. So we got to bring it to a higher state of consciousness again. Okay. Now it's easy now because you've already done it. So when you go in and do it now, it's no big deal. But you need to nail it to bring it to a higher state of consciousness again. So Mary, before I show you the x-rays, and then you just confirm the problem, where it was at, the ADLs, the neck problem and the ADLs. Show them the x-ray, and it's no different showing an x-ray than we show a regular patient. Show them normal first. 80% of showing an x-ray is showing normal, imprinting normal. Show them normal, imprint normal, show them their problem. Can you see that? That's your problem. Okay, you're sitting pretty good right now. Now we want you. So you see, this is all about micro steps. It's micro steps in the room. It's a micro step from that day to the next day with eliminating money and minimizing the hell out of time. And now we're going to do the next micro step. That's when we're going to offer them the package. Now you can offer them the package of 3 days. I tell you what we can do is we have a new patient special, and it doesn't, and then go just list everything that you, and it includes, the consultation and all the different, we would do all the series of tests, check your muscles and the nerves, all the things we didn't get a chance to test. Not just your motion, but your muscle strength, your nerves, the other orthopedic tests we didn't get a chance to do. And it would include the additional x-rays we would take to see what we may be missing. And then it also include 3 treatments. And it's only $97 or $47 or $17, whatever it is your new patient special is. Will that work for you? 9 out of 10 times, they're like, yes. Where you're at in the relationship, you're asking for just a little bit of money and you're giving a lot of value. They go, yes. You start them just like a new patient. All right, let's go ahead. Let me just finish doing some tests. So now, did we do any paperwork up to this point? No. When they don't commit to care, you don't give them paperwork. You want to create a defensive reaction? You go ahead and try to have them fill out paperwork and they didn't even commit to care on day 1. You'll create one hell of a defensive reaction. So, and I need to make sure my staff knows that. We don't want the staff saying, hey, let me have you fill this out. And they haven't even committed to care. No. You want to run the patient off? Go ahead and do that. So it's on day 2, after they've committed to care, that's when we'll start the paperwork, the documentation. All right, let's go ahead and finish doing some of the tests that we need to do. And this is what I did. I said, let me go ahead and finish doing some of the tests we need to do. And then we'll go ahead and treat them. I'll treat them on that day because it's day 2 for them. I'll finish doing the test, the exam. I'll do I'll finish the consultation, the exam. I'll go ahead and treat them, put them on therapy, and then I'll have them do the paperwork. Usually after they commit, I'll have them do the paperwork. And then I'll finish the consultation, the exam, go ahead and treat them, confirm the problem, do therapy, and then schedule them for the next 2 days. That's typically how it works. But that's how it works. You got to pay a lot of attention. What are some major parts about this? You've got to have separate breaks. You can't just, when they come in, you can't do it all at once. That's major. You got to start the introduction, move away, turn your attention away, turn your body away, deal with your patient, come back to them. All of that starts to lower their defenses and resistance more and more. So when we finish with your patient, come back to them, it's no big deal because you've already talked to them on 2 separate occasions. That's major. Okay, the resistances are major. Gateways, second resistances are major. You'll get 7 out of 10. You'll get 7 out of 10 of those people admitting to a problem, especially if they're over 30. Remember, if they're under 30, what the problem that I focus with is accidents. Have you ever been I'll go to gateways, but I'm going to include accidents. And then the kids, if it's a kid, now we're going to do scoliosis, but I'll cover that totally separately. How we handle that is separate, how we handle that. Because and that's the other rule. Every kid that comes in gets checked for scoliosis. These are rules. My office is a new patient machine because there's all these potential patients. When they come in and they're non-patients, they're somewhere on that S curve. I'm going to find them. That's the keys to the in-office activation. Now, if you don't have an X-ray, what do you want to do at this time? Well, you can offer them the care. Is one option is they offer them the care without the X-rays, and then they just have to get that secondarily. Or you just have to say at that point, after you finished everything, you say, tell you what, if you want, you can get the X-rays, or you can just sell the package if you got a package that includes it.
So it gets there gets to be a little bit of a wrinkle if you don't have an X-ray. But that's how you want to handle it. If you don't have an X-ray, so you nailed everything down: admit, consequences, personalization, talk, tell, exam, all of that. So I tell you what I would do is I would just get X-rays taken to actually see. It'll not only confirm what the problem is, but the severity. And they do X-rays right next door over here, and it only costs $70. Do you want to go ahead and take advantage of that? We could set it up for you. That's what it would sound like. They go get the X-rays, set it up, and they come back. So that's one option. Another option is you confirm the problem. So I tell you what we can do. We do have a new patient special. Now remember, you've already confirmed the problem to some degree, but because you don't have an X-ray, tell you what we do have a new patient special, and it's only X, and it includes XYZ. Would you be interested in that? But that's kind of what you have to do. So there's a little bit of a drop off there if you don't have an X-ray, but that's how you want to do it. All right, everybody. This is a rule. Everybody that comes in my office, everybody comes in your office, your staff should be trained on exactly what to say and do to get them back to you. And then you should know these steps. These are individual, separate steps that make it happen. And like I told you, you'll get about 7 out of 10 new patients that come in as guests. You'll get about 7 out of 10. And then you, depending on how big your practice is, like when I'm seeing 200, 300 visits a week, we had a lot of guests come through. I mean, I don't think there was a day like a typical Monday, Wednesday, Friday when we would see maybe 70, 80, 90 visits that there weren't any guests coming through. Usually the bigger days, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, there was always some guests coming in with patients. Guests meaning their spouse, their friend, something, you know. So this was regular. In my office, this was regular. I mean, it was pretty unusual to go a few days or a week without doing this, getting another patient from a guest. Now, if you're not seeing a lot of patients, you're not going to have as many potential guests come through. But this is how you've got to see you're the new patient machine. You are. You've got to develop your skills, your communication techniques. You've got to be able to do this. When you can't do this, you're stuck with 8% utilization. Now, I'm going to do this over and over. I'll go through the admit, consequences, personalization phase, and handle time and money over and over, whether it's a monthly in-office promotion, whether it's the scoliosis check, the in-office activation check, whether it's the referral, third party. That's the educational sales script that gets new patients left and right. They're out there everywhere. You just got to know how to talk to them. Same with the president, whether it's one-on-one, whether it's third party, or whether it's a presentation. It's all the same. Admit, consequences, personalization, admit, establish need, admit, consequences, personalization, minimize time and money. And obviously it's easier if it's in a trusted relationship to some degree. Well, this is one of the highest trusted relationships there are, is a guest coming in with a patient. It's one of the easiest new patients. Same with like the spouse to day 4, the spouse referral program on day 5. That's one of the easiest new patients to get because of the high trust, and we're going to know if there's a problem or not. I mean, you start from the circle of influence, inner to outer. And of course, that's what we cover. That's what all the marketing covers. The great news is you don't have to learn 20 different things. You've got to learn the core of educational sales, and then you apply it to these different systems, starting with the inner circle of influence, moving out. And then you can leverage it. You can do one-on-one, either try to get that one patient one-on-one, referral, or in a group. That's why this is high. There's high trust. Spouse, high trust. Kids, scoliosis, high trust. It's really easy to find out if they got problems or not. And then the new patient orientation, high trust. This is like shooting ducks in a barrel. But you have to have the knowledge and skill, and you got to be able to you got to be willing to do it. Otherwise, you're stuck with waiting for the phone to call, for the phone to ring. Good luck with that. Or you got to write the check for advertising. Good luck with that. I want those to be secondary issues. The main new patients, I want from what I create, from my knowledge and skill, that's what creates security. There's no security with advertising. There's only one guarantee with advertising. It's eventually not going to work. So that's why you don't have to do a lot of systems. You just got to be good at a few. You just got to be good at educational sales and a few. That's it. And then I'll take the peripheral. Somebody, there's call-ins or walk-ins or whatever. That's the periphery. That's not the bulk of what makes a practice. I'm the bulk of what makes the practice. I know patient retention. I know how to get the patients. I'm getting the in-office activation. I'm getting the spouse to day 5. I'm getting the child in the scoliosis exam. I'm getting the new patient orientation and having them sign up their spouse, mother, or father. I'm doing all these things. And then I know how to keep them when I get them. And it's up to me how much I want. If I want to do more, go do a presentation or two. Bust it out, break it out. I bring on an associate. I'll start doing some presentations to fill up the associate real fast. It's up to me. It's not up to the market anymore. The market's huge.